Hello, welcome to another non-finito BG painting tutorial. Today we're painting the Observer from Trench Crusade. So here I got some ultramarine blue, some Varinian red. It's more of like an earthy red. Kind of want to lean more into like the rusty, like the rusty look for this miniature's armor. And yeah, I'm gonna make like a purple undertone to kind of wash this miniature in. Alright, so I'm mixing those two together and we'll get to work. Again, I'm working very thin here. Alright, and you could just try to get all the shadow areas because I'm going to cover all the areas that are going to be getting hit by the light with another color anyways, but you can also just cover the whole damn thing in this purple wash. It's not really gonna matter. I just want that shadow area to kind of display that purple. It's really gonna make that armor more believable. And this is my yellow ochre deep. I'm mixing this a little bit of Varinian red, trying to get like more of like an orange tone, but again I'm leaning more towards those earthy, less saturated. This is why I'm working with the Varinian red instead of a Candium red. This is also why I'm not using a Candium yellow. I'm using a yellow ochre. Alright, now I'm just gonna, all the areas that are being hit by that light is gonna get covered with this color. I applied this while some of that purple wash was still wet because I kind of like how it kind of mixes together and you get like different tones and stuff. And then where you want it to be stronger, you just apply more layers if you want it to be stronger, right? But if you want to like get like a gradient, this is a good way to get a gradient. Wait till it dries a little bit, that purple, but then not completely, and so as you start working that color in, it'll blend very naturally. That's one of the perks of using oil paints. Alright, now here's my warm white. I never use titanium white really. I just like the warm white. I don't know why. But yeah, the ochre with the warm white. Now I'm gonna start getting into those highlights. Right, just a tad bit of that Varinian red, right, so that it's kind of still gets all tied together a little bit, but mixing together my highlighted color, you know, and I just start adding a little bit there, a little bit here, till I find that perfect tint I'm looking for. Alright, and I just start hitting all those areas that are gonna hit like the edge highlights a little bit. I'm gonna go over again all those edge highlights, but maybe with a brighter color, but like this, I'm just slowly mapping out my light. Basically, that's really what you're doing when you're painting these miniatures. You're just mapping out light. Here's another little tip. If you feel like you put a little too much or it seems like it kind of blobbed in on a certain area, great thing about oil paints, they stay wet, so you can get a dry clean brush and kind of start stippling it outwards so it kind of naturally blends in. That would be very hard to do with acrylics, not something acrylics is really good at. Once you put it on, if that water, as soon as it starts evaporating, which almost instantaneous, that color is kind of sticking around, you know. So now you got to start moving into like, okay, how do I correct it with the next layer and the next layer? But you get a lot of working time with each layer that you're putting down with oils. Alright, so like I said, I was going to go in with another highlight. So here it's just yellow ochre and that warm white, and now I'm going to start really going in. This is going to be my brightest highlight now. Alright, I'm using it very sparingly, only areas where like the curves are at their highest points, where the reflection is like, this is my spot highlighting, if you've heard that term, spot highlights. Right, only on the edges, only on the highest part of the curves, facing where my source of light might be. Alright, now some burnt umber. I'm gonna take some of that, and we're just gonna add it to the staff that the observer's holding. I want it to be like a wooden staff. Alright, and I don't show any of the mixing process for the rest of it, but then I mix in a little bit of the yellow ochre, a little bit of the warm white to try and start getting like the form of the staff as far as which side is facing the light and stuff. I didn't get that mixing part on video, sorry. I'm going pretty simple with that cloak over the shoulder. It's just gonna be a black cloak. You know, I'm sticking to the source artwork pretty much for this miniature. Alright, now for basing. Again, if you're new here, I make my own bases. I have a 3D pen, I have a little template. I make it because I like to make them because I can make them completely flat. That way they simulate into my terrain so much more aesthetically. It's way nicer to see them on a board when you don't see that black rim around a base. So use some corkboard and just start building this out. Then I test fit it, make sure my miniature is going to be stable, and it is perfect. And I start adding these little bits of skulls, you know, just to add some interest to this base. Now I gotta prime this base. So this is a brush on primer. I'm gonna cover the whole base with this, and then I'll start actually painting the base. If you try to paint oil paints with mineral spirits on this corkboard, it just kind of soaks in. It's like a sponge, you know, so it doesn't really, it's really hard to paint on it, right? So that's why you gotta seal it all in with a primer, and then it'll be much easier to paint over. just paint it with some of that burnt umber and that yellow ochre mixture, you know, just going for those earthy tones. And I just start playing with like kind of like brushing on them. I don't want to call it dry brushing. It's not dry brushing. It's pretty wet paint, but like just trying to hit all those edges with the angle of my brush to hit all that, to bring that texture out so it actually looks like earth and looks like rocks. And then for the skulls, it's mostly warm white, but I add a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of ultramarine blue because I kind of want like a greenish color for that skull. Like the bone, like if you look at bones, they kind of have like sometimes, like especially if they've been sitting out for a long time, almost like a ochreish greenish color to them. More on the cool side, that's why I add the ultramarine blue. But not too much. You know, don't just go gray, or else gray, if you paint plastic gray, it doesn't look like you painted it, right? So you gotta add a little bit more visual interest. There we go. And then I hit the highlighted areas with some warm white and a tad bit of ultramarine blue. And that's going to break up all those warm colors I was using for the base as well, by bringing in those cool tones with the skulls. I wasn't happy with that shoulder plate, right? It kind of just like blended in. I wanted like some color to really make the miniature, at least an element of the miniature pop. So I decided to just go with a red shoulder plate here, right? Just to break things up a little bit. It was just looking a little too samey for me. Alright, now for the villainy inks. We always end with the villainy inks. What you want to do, if you want to move quickly, you got to put some of that really thin super glue down on top of that miniature. And then once that dries, then you can start adding these villainy inks to a lot of those areas. So yeah, here's the finished work. Hope you enjoyed, or maybe even got some educational value out of this for your painting. Yeah, if you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, all that. Thank you so much.